And joining me now is Ambassador Nikki Haley. Ambassador Haley, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks so much, Kristen, for having me.
Well, we really appreciate your being here. As you know, former President Donald Trump has called on you to get out of this race. The RNC says it's time for Republicans to unify around Mr. Trump. What is your response to this apparent pressure campaign against you?
Look, I mean, he can't bully his way through the nomination. I think that, it's not surprising that he is surrounded by the political elite. But let's keep in mind, the political elite has gotten nothing done for us in stopping the wasteful spending, has gotten nothing done to secure the border, has gotten nothing done to keep us more safe as we see wars around the world. And so, look, that's exactly what we don't want. I mean, the reason the political elite are upset and the members of Congress are upset is because I've pushed for term limits. I've pushed for mental competency tests. I've said if they don't get a budget out on time, they shouldn't get paid. So, look, I have fought this political class my entire life, and I'd much rather be fighting for the people than fighting for the elected officials in D.C.
Ambassador, do you think, just going back to the RNC, calling for the party to unify around Trump, which happened, by the way, during the New Hampshire primary before the polls had even closed, do you think the RNC has been an honest broker in this case?
I mean, clearly not. If you're going to go and basically tell the American people that you're going to go and decide who the nominee is after only 2 states have voted, 48 states out there, this is a democracy. The American people want to have their say in who is going to be their nominee. We need to give them that. You can't do that based on just 2 states. And not only that, it's 1,215 delegates to reach the nomination. Donald Trump has 32. I have 17. So let's let this play out. Let's do what we need to. We saw South Carolinians. We had 1,500 people last night in Greenville County. And I think that Americans want to be able to make this decision themselves. I don't think this is the place of the RNC to do it. I think that Trump overstepped when he pushed them to do it. And I think that's why he's had to back down. And that was the right thing to do, was to back down.
And just, do you have actual knowledge and awareness that he pushed the RNC to do that and then pulled back?
We know exactly the people that pushed it are his people. And I know that during the debates, he was pushing Ronna McDaniel to stop the debates. He was calling her every other day. He's been pushing them to pay for his lawsuits and all of these other things. But at the end of the day, this is not about the RNC. This is about the American people. This is not about a political party deciding who they want to be the nominee. When I ran for governor, there were 5 candidates. I was far from the nominee. I was the one, I ran against a lieutenant governor, an attorney general, a congressman, and a state senator. They did the same thing to me then. I won then. I'm going to win now.
Let's talk about your path forward. As you know, Trump has a double-digit lead in the polls. He secured the endorsement of a lot of the top officials in your state. Do you need to win South Carolina, your home state, in order to win the nomination?
Well, let's first talk about the people that he surrounded himself in South Carolina. Yes, he got the endorsement of the governor, but that's the same governor that I defeated when I ran for governor. Yes, he got the endorsement of the political class in South Carolina, but that's the same group that I forced to have to show their votes on the record. It's the same group that I forced to pass ethics reform where they had to disclose their income. It's the same group where I vetoed $500 million of pet projects that I didn't think taxpayer dollars should go to. So there's no surprise there that the political elite are surrounding him there. Trump has become an insider. That's what it comes down to, is he's more interested in satisfying the elected class than he is in satisfying the people. When it comes to South Carolina, look, we wanted to be strong. And I think we started with 2% in Iowa. We ended up with 20%. We got to New Hampshire. We needed to do better than that. And we did. We got 43% of the vote. Now we're going into South Carolina. We need to be stronger than what we did in New Hampshire. And so that's certainly what we need to do. But it's not just that we need to be stronger, Kristen. Trump needs to be stronger. He's not getting the independent vote. He's not getting a segment of the Republicans. And so he's got some work to do as well.
Let me just make sure we get an answer, though, Ambassador Haley, because this is your home state. You were governor in the state of South Carolina. Do you need to win your home state in order to stay in this race? Is it do or die?
I think I need to do better than I did in New Hampshire. So this is a building situation.
But
it's not about which
win,
state you get and which state you don't.
Do you need to actually win? I hear you saying you need to do better, but don't you need to win your home state to show that you can win a state, win your home state, and really put some delegates on the map for yourself?
Well, we've got 17 delegates. He's got 32. I'd say that's pretty good to start. What I do think I need to do is I need to show that I'm building momentum. I need to show that I'm stronger in South Carolina than New Hampshire. Does that have to be a win? I don't think that necessarily has to be a win, but it certainly has to be better than what I did in New Hampshire, and it certainly has to be close. And so that's what we're focusing on. If we win, great. If not, we've got to show that we're continuing to narrow that margin along the way.
So I hear
to give people in Super Tuesday states a reason to know that they can continue to see and have us fight on.
So I hear you saying you are in this regardless of the results in South Carolina through Super Tuesday. It sounds like here's how the Wall Street Journal editorial board is thinking about your campaign. They write, if she can remain competitive, there's an argument for Ms. Haley to stay in the race through the July convention. Mr. Trump faces a treacherous legal road, and one of the cases against him could go to trial. If he's convicted of a felony, 42% of voters in New Hampshire and nearly a third of Iowa's GOP caucus goers said Mr. Trump would be unfit for the presidency. Are you staying in this race in case Donald Trump is convicted of a crime, Ambassador?
I've never stayed in this race because of court cases. Really, I don't know what all the court cases are. I haven't paid attention to what he's won, what he's lost, what he's fighting for, any of that. What I know is, the first one came down, and he spent a lot of time ranting about how he lost that court case. But the reality is, every time he's talking about defending himself in court, he's not talking about getting our economy back on track. He's not talking about closing the border. He's not talking about how we're going to get our kids reading again and getting us focused again. He's not talking about law and order. That's the problem, is he's not talking about what the American people want. Kristen, look at what happened just in the 48 hours after the election. Here he went on he was totally unhinged, went on a rampage election night, talking about revenge. Then the next day he goes and says anybody who supports me is not going to be allowed to be part of MAGA. Well, that means those people that voted for me in Iowa and New Hampshire and those people who've donated to me, really, you're going to go and say they're not in your club? You're supposed to be president representing everyone. Yeah. Then he goes and pushes the Republican Party to make him the nominee. I mean, look, he's insecure. He's threatened. He sees what's happening, and he knows these court cases are going to take him further and further away from the campaign trail. And that's what he's worried about.
And you bring up the court cases. I want to get to them, but just yes or no. Are you in this race through the convention beyond Super Tuesday? Yes or no?
As long as I keep growing per state, I am in this race. I have every intention of going to Super Tuesday. Through Super Tuesday, we're going to keep on going and see where this gets us. That's what we know we're going to do right now. I take it one state at a time. I don't think too far ahead.
Let's talk about...
But I'm not going anywhere.
All right. Let's talk about the court cases. On Friday, a jury ordered Donald Trump to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $83 million in damages for defamation. As you know, this was a year after a different jury found him liable for sexual abuse. You have said, and you repeated here, maybe it's fair, maybe it's not. But let me just ask you on the substance of the jury's ruling, should that be disqualifying to be president?
I think the American people decide who should be disqualifying. I've always thought it's the same thing with the RNC picking the nominee. We don't need to take over anything that the American people have the right to do. I think that I have always said I think Donald Trump has the right to be on the ballot. I've always said I trust the American people. They know how to make good decisions. And so I think that they're going to see this for what it is. They see that he's completely distracted. They see that he's going on these rants about how he's the victim. And I think that's exactly what we don't need a strong leader to be. And so, these court cases are going to keep happening one by one. We're going to keep seeing him in a courtroom, and we're going to see him come out and do a press conference. That's not what you want a president to be. But more than that, that's not what we want Russia to see. That's not what we want China to see. And that's not what we want Iran to see.
And what is unique about this case is that the jury has now ruled. They have found him liable of sexual abuse. Do you not trust the jury and their findings, Ambassador?
I absolutely trust the jury, and I think that they made their decision based on the evidence. I just don't think that should take him off the ballot. I think the American people will take him off the ballot. I think that's the best way to go forward, is not let him play the victim, let him play the loser. That's what we want him to do at the end of the day.
Just to be clear, do you think it's disqualifying, Ambassador?
I don't think he should be taken off the ballot. I think the American people will decide if he's disqualifying or not. We don't do that, Kristen, in America. Anybody that wants to run can run. And I think that's really important. We have seen a lot of people try and infringe on our freedoms and our democracy. We can never let that happen. I don't want a political party deciding who's right and wrong. I don't want, any judges to decide who deserves to be on the ballot and who doesn't. I want the American people to decide it. That's what the heartbeat of America is, our democracy. Let's let the American people decide who they want to lead this country.
Ambassador, just one more time before we move on, and we are going to move on to another topic, but you have said his advanced age makes him unfit. You have just now called him unhinged. Why give him a pass on this issue where a jury has found him liable for sexual abuse?
I'm not giving him a pass on anything. I mean, I have said, he went on for 3 or 4 minutes talking about how I didn't secure the Capitol on January 6th. I mean, clearly he was confused, thinking that I was Nancy Pelosi. But look, that's exactly why we don't need 2 people in their 80s running for president. We need someone who can serve a strong 8 years to get our country back on track. You can't do that with him. And I think it's not being disrespectful. It's the fact that when you're 80, you are declining. That's just a fact. And so, look, there are multiple things that I think are the reason he should not be president. That's the whole reason I'm running. I do think that he is in decline, and I think that he needs to know to step away. I do think that he surrounds himself in chaos, and we can't be a country in disarray and have a world on fire and be in chaos. I do think that these court cases are distracting, not just to the American people, but to him himself, which is keeping him from talking about what really matters. That's exactly why I don't think he should be president.
Ambassador, you bring up his attacks. I want to ask you about his attacks against you. He has mocked your birth name. He has suggested you're not eligible to be president because your parents weren't born here. Of course, you are eligible. You were born here. But I'm curious, just big picture, what do you make of him bringing back this birther playbook against you? Do you think it will work in South Carolina and win over voters there?
I mean, honestly, Kristen, I laugh every time I see one of his tweets, every time I see him throw a temper tantrum, because I know Donald Trump very well. When he feels insecure, he starts to rail, he starts to rant, he starts to flail his arms, and he starts to get upset. When he feels threatened, he starts to throw all kinds of things out there. I would always tell him he was his own worst enemy. He's proving that right now. He proved it in the fact that he continues to be chaotic. Those things don't hurt my feelings. This is not personal for me. What is personal for me is getting America back on track.
Would you go so far as to call those attacks racist, Ambassador?
I think that's for everybody else to decide. I think that they, the fact that he continues to go down these paths of saying things, is this who we want as a president? Is this who we want our kids to see? I don't think so. And look, he's just going to become more unhinged, Kristen. Hold on. It's going to get worse, because that's what he does when he feels like he's not in control.
I do want to ask you about this border deal. There have been talks for weeks now, a group of senators working on this deal. They seem to be close to the finish line, but now Donald Trump is trying to torpedo any deal. He wrote this weekend, quote, "A bad border deal is far worse than no border deal." What is your message right now to Republicans on Capitol Hill? Should they get this deal done?
My message to Republicans is do not leave D.C. until you finish the job. We have waited for so long for Congress to do something about the border. First, Joe Biden should be securing the border. This is a national security threat. The idea that he is actually suing Governor Abbott for trying to protect the people of Texas is wrong. America's acting like it's September 10th, and we better remember what September 12th felt like, because it only takes one person to cause a 9/11 moment. The second thing is Republicans and Democrats Democrats need to get into a room. They don't need to leave until they figure this out, because the American people are not safe at this point. And Donald Trump, the last thing he needs to do is tell them to wait to pass a border deal until the election. We can't wait one more day, but they do need to get this right. I don't know exactly the details in the bill, but one of the things I saw is that they didn't have the Remain in Mexico policy. You have to have the Remain in Mexico policy, because people don't even need to step foot on U.S. soil. That's the first place we need to start.
Ambassador Haley, the Biden administration has said they're taking action against Governor Abbott because they see some of his policies as inhumane. But let me ask you, big picture. We heard President Biden say he's prepared to shut down the border if this deal passes. If you were president, if you were in the White House right now, and I know that you are saying Republicans should get a deal, but you're also saying you don't see everything in it you want, would you sign this bill? Would you sign this into law?
Well, I haven't seen the details of the bill, so I can't comment on whether I would sign it. What I can tell you is I've seen things that are not in it that should be in it. And let's keep in mind, I appreciate that President Biden is saying he wants to be humane in this process. But look, I dealt with the border when I was in the United Nations. While President Trump was dealing with it in D.C., I was on the ground in Honduras and Guatemala. What those people go through in that trek to America is horrific, and it's dangerous, and it's unsafe. We need to make sure they never even think there's an opening for them. They shouldn't even make that trek in the first place. And what's happened is they see all their family members coming over. They see all their friends coming over. President Biden gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary protective status, which is Social Security numbers and driver's licenses. The first thing they do, I saw this at the UN, they pick up the phone and call their relatives and say, come on over. We need to stop what's happening.
But Ambassador, when you
need to get this done.
When you hear President Biden say he's prepared to shut down the border, what say you about that? You agree with that assessment?
I say to President Biden, prove it. Get into a room and get this done and prove it, because the American people are waiting. I put this on Republicans and Democrats. I'm not picking favorites in this. I'm telling you, they have all not done a good job from the very beginning, and it is time that we get this country safe again.
Let's talk about what's happening in the Middle East. There are reports the U.S. is getting closer to negotiating a deal that would effectively mean Israel would suspend its military operations in Gaza for about 2 months in exchange for a release of the remaining hostages. The CIA director is in Paris negotiating these talks right now. If you were president, if you were in the White House right now, is this the type of deal you would get behind? Would you be supporting this and urging Israel to accept this compromise?
We want to do everything we can to get the hostages home, but I also know what this means. This means that during those 2 months, Hamas is going to refuel. They're going to rebuild their ammunition. They're going to replan. They're going to plan all of the things that they're going to do. They have said they're going to do another attack, and Israel has to keep themselves safe. So this is a fine line that we need to see them walk. First of all, we need to make sure Israel has whatever they need when they need it. We need to make sure that we eliminate Hamas and never take our eye off the target,
so
because they have said they're going to do this again,
Ambassador,
and we need to get the hostages home.
But do you think it's a bad deal to pause the fighting for 2 months?
I think if Israel is willing to pause, then we should. If Israel is not willing to pause, then we shouldn't. They are driving this train. When they saw so many people die on October 7th, and they hear Hamas saying they're going to do this again. Kristen, when I was at the United Nations, I gave a speech 5 years ago, and it told the world that there were maps. These maps were held by Hamas, and it showed that if they could break through the barrier, this is how they were going to kill as many Jewish people as fast as they could. That happened. I know there would be no Hamas without Iran. I know that they want to eliminate Israel. We've got to find a way to protect Israelis and get those hostages home. This may work. We have to see. But what we also have to do is not take our eyes off of Hamas, because they're going to use this time to kill more people and do more things to build up their military.
Ambassador, I want to ask you about something that happened at your home in South Carolina last month. We're just learning about it right now. Authorities responded to a swatting call. Just for our audience, that's when a fake emergency call is called in, creating the possibility of a really dangerous situation. You were not home at the time, but what was your reaction? What are the implications of this happening, Ambassador?
Well, Kristen, I was not home, but Michael and I take care of my parents. They are 87 and 90, and we take care of them, and they were at home and with their caregiver. And so I will tell you that the last thing you want is to see multiple law enforcement officials with guns drawn pointing at my parents and thinking that something happened. It is an awful situation. It put the law enforcement officers in danger. It put my family in danger, and it was not a safe situation. And that goes to show the chaos that's surrounding our country right now, and the fact that these things are happening. And so, look, I'm not the only one that's happened to. It wasn't the first time. I think we've had it happen twice. But I will tell you this, that I think that what's really important is we have lived in a country of chaos for quite a while now. It is time that we remember what normal felt like. It is time that we remember what healing feels like. It is time that we remember what it's like not to have division, not to have hate.
Ambassador,
we are Americans, and we need to remember how blessed we are.
Just very quickly, and we have two more topics I want to get to. How concerned are you about political violence right now overall, given what happened?
I mean, I think, look, I feel it. We've been to town halls, 150-something town halls. There are things that have happened. I've had threats made. It's what happens when you run for president. I can handle that. That is not the problem. What I don't want is for my kids to live like this. That's the reason I'm doing this, is to have this division and not. My husband is deployed right now, sacrificing for America with his military brothers and sisters. They are doing that because they love this country, because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. We have to go back to remember what it's like to be Americans first. That's the biggest thing that's heartbreaking for me, is we're better than this. Our country is better than this. And the rest of the world is looking at us wondering what happened. We've got to right this ship. We've got to get it back. And I know we can do it. America has an amazing ability to self-correct. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom to know where up is. We're there. We need to start looking up.
Well, Ambassador Haley, let me just ask you, looking forward, if you do fall short, if you don't get the nomination, you have said before that being on a ticket with Donald Trump is, quote, off the table. Let me just ask you to put a fine point on it. Have you completely ruled out being Donald Trump's running mate?
I have said I don't want to be anyone's vice president. I don't know how more clear I can be. Anyone's vice president.
So you've ruled it out, Ambassador?
I am running for president. I think that's what I'm saying. If I say I don't want to be anyone's vice president, I think that's pretty clear. What I am telling you is I am going to run, and I am running to win. And I think the American people deserve better. And I think this is a time where the American people need a lot of courage. We have seen every general election poll. Trump does not beat Biden in a general election. We have seen that. I defeat Biden by double digits. Yeah. When you look at that, that's a mandate, Kristen, to go get the wasteful spending out of control, to secure our border with no more excuses, to get our kids reading again. That's what we need to be doing.
Would you rule out endorsing him as a nominee? You have said before that you would support him. Given your stepped-up language, you're calling him unhinged. Would you rule out endorsing him as a nominee?
I'm not even thinking about endorsements, Kristen. I know that y'all want to talk about what happens if. I'm focused on defeating Donald Trump. Period. That's it. I don't think past that. I'm not thinking past South Carolina or Super Tuesday. What I want to do is go and save this country. We have a country to save. I'm determined to do it. Y'all can think forward. I'm focused on the sweet people of South Carolina and making sure that we get them their voices heard. And we're going to work this state as hard and as fast as we ever have.
All right. Ambassador Nikki Haley, thank you so much. Good luck out on the campaign trail. Stay safe. We really appreciate your joining us.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.